Ever since PlayStation confirmed their physical media future was going to go all digital, things have been a mess. Sony has had hordes of users canceling their PS Plus subscriptions, as seen here, from Insider Gaming recently, which originally reported this story. Sony's getting hit where it hurts, but now things have taken a new turn. As PlayStation Lifestyle posted recently, Sony is actually now offering something they haven't done in a long time. They're offering a rare 50% off PlayStation Plus subscription voucher for any users that have recently quit the service. Oh, well that's interesting. As this one Reddit thread showed, a user who attempted to cancel their PlayStation Plus due to Sony's desire to move away from physical media was suspiciously then hit with a code offer upon cancellation, which told them that they were suddenly allowed to redeem 50% off for 3 months of PlayStation Plus upon canceling. Others were offered deals immediately. Others resubscribed because the offer given was too good to ignore, which is what Sony definitely wanted people to do. Other users confirmed, as seen here, that they were offered 25% off for a whole year of PS Plus upon canceling, but others didn't take the bite despite this. Here's another user confirming they also got a deal sent their way upon cancellation too. One user brings up dynamic pricing, which is something shady that companies do by the way. If you don't know what that is, dynamic pricing is something that a business will do where they adjust the prices that users all see on storefronts in real time based on demand, supply, or even competition. One of the shadiest parts of dynamic pricing, however, is that companies, not just in video games but loads of industries, will actually adjust prices based on your behavior as a consumer on a case-by-case level. So if you buy lots of things at full price, the likelihood is you're going to see deeper deals might not actually show up as often. The reason is because your behavior is dictating that you are willing to spend more money than, say, the average person does. Then on the flip side, if you're scathingly cheap and refuse to pay anything over a certain amount of money, the AI will then see that and then adjust the prices for you to try to influence you into now buying more things. As GameSpot puts it here, Sony's dynamic pricing model, which is not unique to Sony since every company does this to some degree, is already doing this, but at a crazy level due to what's going on right now. This is why certain users, when they cancel, are being given varying levels of discounts from Sony to get them to resubscribe. Sony's AI is likely combing through their account, reading their spending habits, and figuring out the right price point to offer them to get them to return, which is very, I'm just gonna say it, kind of scummy. According to GameSpot, dynamic pricing and Sony's use of it started in March 2026, as seen here where I highlighted. This could vary the price of a game like Stellar Blade, for example, from being $40 for one user to just being $21 for another in the same sale. For example, in March 2026, as seen here, Video Game Deals, who goes by Cheap Gamer, showcased that Astrobot was $27 American. But as one user in the comments showed back then, Astrobot for them in the same sale was $39.59 American. The likelihood is that this user and others buy more games at release. Therefore, the dynamic pricing sees them as big spenders, or puts them in a different group. This is likely what's also going on with this PS Plus cancellation versus resubscribing controversy right now. Sony is losing probably tons of subscribers to PlayStation Plus because it's realistically one of the only tangible ways that users can effectively hurt Sony for their decision when it comes to physical media. They are treating every user to varying capacity as their own storefront, if you will, where the prices are varied and shown based on your spending habits. It's gross, honestly. I know, not only Sony does this, it's everywhere. But I really don't care, because either way, I think everyone should just be charged the same no matter what, because a sale is a sale. Just because you may spend more than another person, it doesn't mean you should pay more for the exact same product as someone else does. As that same Reddit post showed here, a user in Scandinavia also got a 25% offer from Sony when they canceled their subscription too, meaning that Sony is, trying to win as many people back as humanly possible as quickly as they can. And as the user at the bottom there says, these are individual offers. Yep, exactly. That's what it is. Like I said, each user is their own storefront at this point. And the deals that Sony is dishing out at a rapid pace here is varying to get them to return after boycotting and walking away the way that they did. Other users, as seen here, are taking advantage of the situation that surrounds Sony, and they're actually offering steps to take where you can cancel on purpose, wait a bit, and then Sony will inevitably hit you maybe possibly with that return policy. And yeah, I know there's always going to be those kinds of people who want to try to to profit during a crisis, but hey, what are you going to do? It is what it is. Another user here also confirmed, yeah, it worked for them too. Sony offered them 3 months at half off too, so this is kind of everywhere. Sony is absolutely offering deals to as many people as they can to ensure that they keep those numbers healthy and up. Because their investors, who, I mean, let's be real, are Sony's and every other corporation's real customers that they care about, are not going to like to see that the PS Plus numbers are going down over time. But in this case, it's kind of inevitable. Even Push Square caught wind of the same story as seen here. The point is that this cancellation versus Sony offering as many rewards as possible is just beginning. They are desperate to keep as many people from canceling as possible. But what Sony is offering is a short-term solution either way. It's not a good look to be doing something like this, because it also then confirms that dynamic pricing is absolutely 100% being used here to manipulate people on a case-by-case. As Push Square also reported here, Sony's socials are nothing but people just giving them constant blowback. After almost a week of utter silence from their main account after posting what they did, Sony came back with this post here about the Flex Strike wireless fight stick, and the comments were about nothing that had to do with that fight stick whatsoever. It's not even just that their newest post is getting dogpiled, which has already surpassed like 10 million plus views on Twitter alone. So yes, people are angry. Sony's original post pertaining to the physical media like debacle thing, that sits at somewhere close to 200 million views, if you can believe it. That post, by the way, has had so many community notes attached to it that it's gotten borderline ridiculous too. As seen here, these are all the variations of community notes that have actually hit Sony in the past week. Somehow Sony has been able to remove these community notes from their post, but people just keep applying newer ones that continue to attack Sony regardless, and honestly, I love to see it. This comment section here from Sony socials, as you can see, is what their entire social media looks like right now. It's just people demanding physical discs over and over, and Sony just refusing to respond to any of it. As Push Square further said here, Sony's reputation at this point is at rock bottom, and I honestly agree with them. Currently, Sony's storefront, which is PSN, is probably one of the least desirable storefronts in gaming right now, and as someone who plays on PlayStation, I have to admit that. Not to mention, when it comes to its PS Plus catalog of games and how you access them, everything is, in case you haven't played on PlayStation in a while, things are just buried in menus after sub-menus, and nothing really works the way as intended. It should be a lot easier to use than it is. Sony's refund policy is also not even close to, say, Steam's, right? Sony's refunds practically make it impossible to get your money back if you even open the game and play it once. Whereas on Steam, you have a 2-hour window where any refunds are instantly processed, no matter what the reason was given to. Sony's pricing, beyond the whole dynamic pricing thing, is also a mess, as certain countries pay way more for similar games on PSN than, say, a rival platform like Nintendo, Xbox, or Steam. An example is Brazilian users. They get cooked all the time. Sony also doesn't allow you to gift games, which Steam has been doing since, well, forever. It's kind of ridiculous you still can't do this. Not to mention the other controversy from earlier this year, where user accounts were being hacked despite having two-factor authentication. And of course, Sony, and I will keep banging this drum, has to give users the ability to buy digital game codes from other rival retailers, because it is not fair for Sony to monopolize on their platform and not allow for any direct competition for prices on their platform. If that is allowed to continue, we will keep seeing the price points of video games balloon and omit deals because Sony doesn't have to, which isn't fair to anyone but Sony. Not only that, but Sony's approach to how it communicates with its fan base has also been frankly terrible. Before, we had people in charge who were actual gamers like Shuhei Yoshida and even Sean Layden. These days, people like Herman Halston Moore, they feel nothing than just suits than people who care about video games and the people who actually play them. It just feels as though Sony is more corporatized than ever before, and they have no issue punching down because no one can really punch up at them. Even the PS blog, which used to feel like an actual place where people on PlayStation could, speak to their fans, it feels nothing more than like a corporal slop dumping ground, where Sony just comes once in a while to unbuckle their pants, lay a fat one on the fan base, and then just leaves. Honestly, to me, it feels like Sony is in these cycles where they just keep repeating the same mistakes. In the PS1 and the PS2 era, Sony was on top. They were doing amazing because why? They were listening to the fans. Then if you remember, the PS3 happened and they seemingly then forgot how to communicate and create a console that, while yes, powerful for its time, was also designed in such a way that it was an absolute nightmare for developers, especially third-party ones, to develop the games on. This is actually why many third-party games did not run the way that they should have on PS3 versus, let's say, Xbox 360. Games like Skyrim, for example, ran so poorly on PS3 that version that Sony fans are playing would actually suffer from memory leak problems if you don't remember. It also had other problems where like the game's file size just kept getting bigger the more you played until it became impossible to play because the game couldn't be loaded anymore. This is a problem at PlayStation 3 like all the time. Then of course you had the month-long PSN outage. I remember this, man, which ruined Sony's momentum, and none of this changed until Sony became far more consumer friendly with the PlayStation 4, which repeated, in my opinion, what the PS2 did during its era, and Sony was again on top of the world. They had the games, they had the people in charge doing the right things, and they were actually firing on all cylinders again. And the PS4, by the way, way easier to develop for than the PS3. And again, as soon as they became pro-consumer and even pro-developer too, they were raking in the cash. But Sony, in my opinion, is now repeating the PS3 era all over again, but even worse in every conceivable way. The first-party offerings this generation have been lackluster. They offered little reason to honestly stay on PlayStation, especially when most of them are on Steam anyways right now. But now that they're so anti-consumer, it's getting awful. This means either two things: that the PS6 will be another PS2 or PS4 moment where Sony reverts to changes and becomes the publisher people know that they can possibly be, or we're going to be heading toward another PS3 or PS5 generation, but somehow even worse, where Sony continues to ruin that relationship between the player and the publisher for a third time. It's moronic. They keep mucking up what should be easy wins for them, yet now their competition is not only more consumer friendly, but opposition like Steam, which in my opinion, Steam is their biggest competition. Some people might say Xbox or Nintendo. Honestly, it's Steam, okay? And Steam is already outdoing Sony at their own game with little to no effort at all. I don't know how Gabe Newell does it, honestly, but that dude literally does nothing and wins all the time, okay? To say the PS5 era has been nothing short of a disappointment, especially from coming from a lifetime PlayStation fan like myself, that is an understatement, okay? And this is why you have change.org petitions like this one, as Digital Foundry showed here, which has now reached over 150,000 signatures. Gee, I wonder why. I've featured this petition before. I'll leave a link in the description box below again if you haven't signed it, by the way. But this petition was started by Jade Pierce, who's a CEO of an independent Canadian retailer, and the entire point of this petition is, as it reads here, "We are not against digital. We are against digital being the only option. A large and passionate community still wants a real physical game they own outright, and Sony is about to take that choice away." Even Digital Foundry's take is that digital purchases are fine if they are done on an open platform like Steam with PC and Epic Game Store. But when digital purchases are landlocked into a specific ecosystem like PlayStation, it makes the purchase less appealing because access and the console's functionality can be revoked and changed at any time for whatever reason that they want to give. Digital Foundry's own poll, as seen here, had 86% of users, which comes from a pool of 45,000 votes, saying that the PS5 will be their last console that they ever buy from Sony. Not a small sample, not the biggest either, but a sale is a sale. And where someone calls home for games is important, because the reality is you should not have loyalty to any one platform. And that pains me to say any of this, because again, I do play on PlayStation myself. I like my PlayStation experience when they're not being stupid. And I do not like what's going on here at all myself. I wish this didn't go the way that it did, but Sony needs to ensure that the PlayStation ecosystem allows for open platform-like retailers to compete with them, or they will likely be hit with a class action lawsuit before long. Especially with their blatant obvious use of dynamic pricing that I showed you already. They are 100% manipulating people's anger and fear of missing out to ensure that they still get what they want either way in the end. And personally, the absolute state of that dynamic pricing is exactly why this all matters, because Sony, like others, even Nintendo and more, are able to get away with this nebulous pricing model that they've created because nobody can reasonably tell them otherwise, since again, it's their platform. They can use any tactic in the book really to make whatever they want to happen, and no one can say otherwise. That's not okay. That's the entire reason why we need more options going forward. Sean Layden, that's the former CEO of PlayStation, also chimed in, as seen here from mpfirst.com, that he believes that Sony's push to end physical games is a bad idea at first, but he also believes that digital games are objectively selling better. So he still thinks that Sony is just moving where the consumers are going. As Sean Layden said here, the numbers, in his opinion, do not support the reality, and that keeping physical games going for a small slice of the pie does not seem overly worth it. Even Hideo Kojima, as Insider Gaming reported here, finds the future abandoning physical media to be frightening. This is what Kojima had to say in an interview recently. Since production is ending in 2028, this is about video games, but I grew up with physical media, so I find it really sad. Currently, I've been buying up a lot of Blu-rays, such as various movies and CDs too. The situation is different for games. As they are downloaded to the hard drive, that means the game's data remains on your own hardware. However, if things shift to streaming in the future, that won't be the case anymore. He said more, with streaming subscription services like Netflix or Amazon, there is a server somewhere and you essentially just have the right to turn the tap, and when you do, the data flows out. That's how movies work on these platforms, right? You don't download the data, you access it directly through a subscription. And the consequences of that is that you don't actually possess the data yourself. Kojima finishes with this. There are companies that own these servers and let you turn the tap for a monthly fee. However, with nations, politics, and various ways of thinking, one naturally has to consider the possibility that if there is a change, the data inside will stop being distributed. And if that happens, you won't be able to watch or play the movies and games you like. That is what is frightening. So what is happening to video games in 2028 might also happen to movies. I'd like everyone to keep that in mind. I mean, Kojima predicted many different things that came true with his games already. And even in 2021, he predicted that we would lose ownership of everything we own in the end, as seen here from, again, 2021, as you can see. Everything he says there in those tweets came true. We do not own the things that we buy anymore, and the fear that these things can be cut off at a moment's notice is frankly terrifying. Honestly, every time I look to buy anything now, I have that feeling in the back of my mind that nothing I am doing is technically mine, and honestly, it worries me. Most of us already don't own the music we listen to, right? We play it on Spotify or some other service. Now games are going to be the same? What will that say or do with the medium going forward? Will game developers even care enough to create games they truly want to make if none of it can be cherished or placed on a shelf or loved in the old ways that we used to? Even Xbox, as Game Rib shows here, also confirmed that they will likely also be going digital only for their upcoming console too, the Helix. At this point, only Nintendo will have physical game cartridges for, I guess, at least the Switch 2's lifespan, but who knows if they're just going to do the same thing as everybody else afterwards, right? Either or, Sony is desperately trying to get back as many people as possible through their dynamic PS Plus subscription rates right now, because they are clearly worried by how many people are unsubscribing from their services following, well, everything. They can claim that they want us back, that they changed. I feel like I'm talking about a bad relationship right now, but honestly, that's kind of what it is like. Oh, I changed. Please don't leave. But did they really change? Because let's be real, guys, there was once a time when PlayStation felt almost untouchable. If you wanted the biggest first-party exclusive games or wanted to play games where the largest franchises lived, you bought a PlayStation. It was that simple. The thing is that Sony didn't gain that reputation overnight. They built it over decades of cultivating some of the strongest brands and games, which is why for me, PlayStation's biggest threat going forward is not Xbox. I'm not even sure Microsoft is trying to compete in the traditional console space anymore. Because while Sony continues trying to lock players deeper inside its ecosystem, well, what does Valve do? Steam instead has spent the last 20 years doing almost the exact opposite of Sony. They don't force their players to start over every generation like Sony has done for the PS1, 2, or 3. Sony only started having crossing libraries with PS4 and 5. I mean, Steam has always let your library follow you, and again, instead of charging for online multiplayer, Steam just lets you play using your internet. Wow, what a novel concept. That's crazy. Who could have seen that one coming? Steam has also undeniably built one of the greatest preservation platforms gaming has ever seen. That can't even be denied. denied. And most importantly, Steam has earned something Sony seems to be slowly losing, which is trust. Sony built their entire empire around exclusivity, and it worked almost too well, but it was because Sony was delivering experiences that people actually cared about. God of War, Uncharted, Bloodborne, you get the idea. Stuff like Spider-Man 2018, the original Last of Us, or even Ghost of Tsushima, those sold consoles. People willingly entered Sony's ecosystem because the value proposition was obvious at the time, but these days, that ecosystem doesn't feel nearly as exclusive to me, nowhere near what it used to. Once Sony started releasing their games on PC day one, or porting them in general, it was great news for Steam, yeah, but for anyone invested in PlayStation like myself, it created an uncomfortable question, which was, why am I buying this console then? Why stay here if you're going to put everything over there? Obviously going forward, Sony says they're not going to be releasing their first-party games outside of PC anymore. I guess we're going to see if they make good on that, but either way, the reason why I think Sony is so desperate to keep people locked into PlayStation Plus is because Valve has figured out a long time ago, before any of these publishers, that people, they don't like feeling trapped, right? They want to be respected. Think of your Steam account if you have one. Games you bought 15, maybe 20 years ago, where are they right now? Right, they're still on your account. They are still playable. It's all there. Thousands of games spanning decades. Your library becomes part of your gaming identity, right? Not because Valve forced you to stay, but because you wanted to stay. Steam didn't become dominant by locking players in. It became dominant by giving them reasons to remain voluntarily. That's a much healthier relationship than what Sony is doing. One thing I don't think enough people appreciate is just how valuable permanence has become. I mean, console generations eventually end, don't they? The online store closes like PS3 soon. Hardware changes. Services may even evolve. But with Steam, your account just keeps growing. Every purchase, every release, it just grows as the decades go on. Your investment, in a sense, compounds over time because you aren't rebuilding your library every generation. Instead, you're expanding it. That's good because it changes how people think about buying games. Because then you're not purchasing for a single generation, are you? No, you're purchasing for life. That's really one of Steam's biggest advantages that Sony needs to wrestle with, which is Steam has choice. You can use whatever as a controller even. PlayStation, Xbox, a Steam controller, a keyboard, mouse, whatever you want. You have mods, community patches. The Steam Deck is a handheld version that works already, which Sony needs to get on ASAP, by the way. Valve rarely tells players how they should enjoy their games. Instead, they just build the tools and then the people who use them decide what to do with them. Modern console ecosystems often work the opposite way, don't they? Because everything instead becomes curated, restricted, and controlled. Steam, in a sense, then feels like a playground. The consoles, however, they feel like, I guess, gated communities, if that makes sense. Don't misunderstand me, okay? Playing on PlayStation is not bad inherently, but hardware alone is not enough anymore, in my opinion. The industry has changed. People aren't interested in just buying boxes anymore. They want to buy these ecosystems. They want their libraries, their communities, and the longevity that something like a Steam offers. Even price games become more affordable because Steam is an open platform. PlayStation, Nintendo, or Xbox really aren't in the same way. Well, in Xbox's case, they may be more open. I mean, they got cross-platform ecosystems. Play anywhere, as they say, right? PC integration, maybe not the best example then, but Microsoft clearly understood that the future wasn't just about selling consoles anymore. It was about meeting players wherever they already were, right? Sony's been adapting, but it feels reactive instead of proactive to me. Steam wasn't something Sony planned around 20 years ago because it wasn't a threat then. Now it might be the biggest force reshaping how people buy games, and they cannot deny or run from it. They have to face it head on. I already know someone will say, then is console gaming dead? No, not remotely. Millions will still buy them. Consoles aren't going to disappear tomorrow. That's not the point. The argument here is about expectations. People want and expect flexibility. They want cross-platform saves and libraries and purchases. They want their backwards compatibility, the consumer-friendly policies, and Steam has normalized many of those things already. Steam's entire success story is encapsulated in a single word, which is trust, right? People trust Steam right now. No one really trusts PlayStation. This is why I think PlayStation should be paying very close attention to what Steam is doing these days. Especially now that Sony is planning to go all in on digital. If they want to do this, they have to justify how they're doing it. If all a digital future entails is us having less options, freedoms, or anything else, people will jump ship. And their current slew of exclusive games are not reason enough to stay, in my opinion. God of War Lao Fei is not what most people want. Here's your God of War game without Kratos. Thanks, PlayStation, if that's not your cup of tea. Just wait for Intergalactic: The Heretic Prophet, where you play your bald-headed female hero who's played by someone who hates the player base out there already. That's not exciting. Honestly, the more Sony gives into their Western mindset of doing things, the worse they're going to become. They were much better when they were Japan-focused first than whatever it is that they're doing now. In my opinion, Sony is asking the wrong questions here. They want to know how they can convince people to buy into their next console? They should instead be asking, how do we become the best place to own games instead? This is why Valve is winning by quite literally, again, for the millionth time, Doing nothing. Valve doesn't care what you do. They just exist to give you discounts and let you play the way that you want to. And Sony is seemingly doing everything in their power to destroy every piece of goodwill they have made over the past almost 3 decades now by giving into greed and pushing crazy people with pronouns and bio making games that many people are tired of. Let me guess the next 5 PlayStation first-party exclusives. They're going to be third-person, over-the-shoulder, they're going to have nice graphics, and probably a lead actor in a role who hates the people that are playing their game. Wow, can't wait, Sony. Remind me again why people are so mad at you right now. Ultimately, people don't just buy games anymore, okay? They buy into a future, and increasingly what is happening is that more players seem to believe that that future lives on Steam instead of PlayStation right now. Even I'm considering jumping ship. You know how badly you have to screw up for me, of all people, to think that I might just have to abandon PlayStation for good? Sony needs to fix their entire mission structure, or they are cooked. Everything that they're doing right now, it just goes against their tenets of what PlayStation was built upon as a concept when they first did everything. Like, look, okay, I don't want to hate PlayStation. I don't want any of this to be the reality, but it is. And if Sony's way of fixing their problem is just not fixing the problem at all, but just trying to blanket the whole thing with a one-size-fits-all fix, it's just going to make things even worse. They wouldn't have to plead for people to come back if they just listened to their consumer base, but when the only customers these publishers care about is the investors and what they want, then this is what will continue to happen. So Sony might want us to come back and offer discounts, but is that enough for what comes next inevitably? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching. Subscribe if you'd like to. Sony opened Pandora's box here, guys, and there's no way we're going to let them get away with it, will we?